No sound. All right. It says I have sound. Can you all? Okay, good. The sound just came in. That's really strange because I did a test first and the sound was working. So I don't know where the sound went to. But either way, thank you all for joining me. We have some of our uh, let's see. We have Emily Borger here, Lucas Aziz. We have Chris Dolanish, Peter Paul Van Dyke, Mike Hasselbring. Okay, so let's go back to what I was saying. I was saying, welcome everybody to the first day of a new month. It's May 1st. The year has flown by. I can't believe it's already late spring. Even though, of course, we are all still going through this pandemic, COVID-19. And here at the TSA, we empathize with everyone across the world who is being affected by this pandemic. This is something that may take years to recover from from governments to singular citizens across the world. And we at the TSA, with programs all across the world, are also feeling the effects, we'll call it the fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic. However, what I do want to say is what's most important to us is everyone's health. Knowing that people are healthy or have contracted this virus and have recovered is what really matters to us. And also, our hearts and our thoughts are with those around the world who have possibly lost loved ones, friends or family members to this pandemic. And just know that the memory of those people will continue to live on. So we are wrapping up the Turtles 101 to 401 series, going back and answering questions that maybe I didn't get a chance to get to because there are many questions coming in, or other questions that maybe we need to elaborate on a little more. Now, while I go through this, feel free to continue asking questions. As always, this is a Q&A session. It is based on viewer engagement. So I want to thank you all so much for engaging with me once again on this Friday morning here in sunny South Carolina at TSA Studios, or wherever you may be around the world. I know that many of you are tuning in from across the world where you're getting ready for bed. So thank you. I won't waste your time anymore. Okay, so let's get started. And of course, I'll do that with a shameless plug as usual. Gosh, I'm terrible, aren't I? So World Turtle Day is coming up on May 23rd, and we have a bonfire campaign. Bonfire is a company that has graciously supported us for the last several years in creating apparel of numerous types, from men's and women's t-shirts to tank tops to hoodies. Personally, I'm wearing a hoodie today. It was chilly last night and this morning, so boom, I've got my TSA hoodie on right now. Those are available in our web store on our website, www.turtlesurvival.org. So please make sure you get your merchandise for World Turtle Day. No better way to represent May 23rd than spreading your passion for these timeless animals. All right, we have a lot of people coming in. Chris Dolanish coming in, Pollyanna coming in from Washington, the Colonian Hut. You already have a question from Thailand. I love it. The Colonian Hut has had a lot of great questions for me, some of which I will answer in this webinar. But they ask, how does the Turtle Survival Alliance get their animals? All right, so let me answer that really quick for the Colonian Hut before we get into all these questions. So the Turtle Survival Alliance has a very, very broad network. And for the animals that we have in our captive assurance colonies, they come from this network of zoological or private institutions and other conservation nonprofits, so that we can create these breeding groups. We also get them from private citizens who may have had animals in their care for numerous decades even, that want them to contribute to the conservation of these animals. For our head-started turtles, which means turtles that were hatched and raised to a larger size before release, those typically come from wild nests that females have laid. In many of our programs, we release 90% of the animals that hatch in any given season and hold back about 10% for head starting. Again, head starting is a means by which we increase the animal's size and therefore their hopefully, I have to say hopefully, because not all things are finite with science, is their survival outcome. So that is what head starting is. All right, Crystal G says, nice hoodie. Again, I'll rep it again. Boom, boom, right there. TSA hoodie in the house, and that is available on our web store. All right, so moving on. Let's go to some questions from Turtles 101. And this is where we talked about just the very basics, the turtle, the origins of the turtle, its anatomy, and distribution of turtles across the globe. There was a lot of information given in this webinar, and there were tons of questions. Just so you know, I have gone back through each webinar, and I have cataloged all of the comments, the questions, the hellos, the goodbyes from everyone. And truthfully, what I want to first say before getting into these questions is that it warms my heart. Like, I love putting on these webinars because I love talking about turtles and spreading my passion for turtles. And I love talking about their conservation and the conservation efforts of all of my colleagues and associates across the world who equally love these animals and want to see their survival on this planet. So just going through all those comments and questions really, it just makes me feel great about what I am doing here. So I hope you all have enjoyed this series. Don't worry, this will not be the last webinar, not by a long shot. We're going to have lots of webinars to come, hopefully some of which you'll get very excited about. All right, so let's look through these questions, all right? And I want you all to go through these with me. I have given the person's name who asked this question, or at least their YouTube handle. So first question coming in from my new friend in the Netherlands is Boris. So Boris asked in Turtles 101, do all chelonians have a common name? And for the most part, yes. Most chelonians that have a scientific binomial name, the next question, also have a common name. Now, this common name can vary depending on the geography from where that turtle is, or other people talking about that turtle from the outside. For instance, let's talk about Badiger affinis, the southern river terrapin. This is a critically endangered species native to Southeast Asia. In Cambodia, it is known as the royal turtle. And that is because this turtle was once collected heavily for its meat and eggs. The eggs were believed to have some of those amazing properties that are always touted with turtle eggs. And so the collection of the eggs and of the turtle meat was relegated to Cambodian royalty. So the common name in Cambodia for Batagira finnish is the royal turtle. Throughout the world, however, we know it as the southern river terrapin. Another one, which I've talked about before, the eastern box turtle. That is the common name by which most people know it is, but it might also have other names such as the woodland box turtle. So that's a quick answer to the question, but that brings me to my next question. What is a binomial name? So each species on Earth is given a binomial name. Okay, so you have the genus and the species, and then you may also have a subspecies should that be a polyphyletic genus. Phyletic, excuse me. I just had a shot of espresso, so my words might come out a little bit, but we'll wash that down with some delicious Coca-Cola Zero. All right, so what is a binomial name? So again, you have the genus. So like we just talked about with the southern river terrapin, the genus is Batagira. And then you have the species name, which is its specific epithet. And for that species, it would be a finis. So every species on Earth that has been described has this Latin or scientific binomial name. Now, that scientific binomial name can then have another name after it, the subspecies name, which actually brings me to a great question here. Peggy Detmers asks, is there a lab performing DNA analysis of Chrysemys picta? I'm not exactly sure. Sorry, I don't know everything about all aspects of turtledom. Some things I do have to look up or ask a friend of mine like Peter Paul Van Dyke, who is on this morning. But as far as Chrysemys picta, that's actually a really good example. So the nominate or primary species is Chrysemys picta, the painted turtle. However, there are 4 subspecies. You have Chrysemys picta, which is the eastern painted turtle, the nominate subspecies. You have Chrysemys picta marginata, which is the midland painted turtle. You have Chrysemys picta dorsalis, which is the southern painted turtle. And you have Chrysemys picta bellii, which is the western painted turtle. So that actually was perfectly timed. Okay, she's not a ringer, but it was perfectly timed to talk about the subspecies epithet. All right, so let me look really quick. Chris just said he just became a TSA member. Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate that. Peter Paul says it depends on what picta DNA you want. The whole genome was done by UC Davis. See, this is why it's good to have someone like Peter Paul Van Dyke on, so he can answer something like that the whole genome of Chrysemys picta was done by UC Davis. All right. Let's see. The Colonian Hut asks, is there going to be a name or subspecies name of localities of a main species of turtle? So when a turtle is described, you have the original name given to it. And oftentimes, if you actually look, that name will change throughout the course of history. And that can be influenced by different researchers who have done subsequent research on the species. It can be influenced by DNA analysis, such as mitochondrial DNA or nuclear DNA. So that can change throughout time. But that's a really good question. Animals One says painted turtles are the best. I do. I love painted turtles. Growing up in upstate New York and Northern Virginia, I used to find Eastern painted turtles all the time. They were one of the turtles that was a major segue into my lifelong passion and conservation efforts for these animals. Chris says he has a male Western painted turtle. Want to get him a mate? Yeah, Western painted turtles, they're absolutely gorgeous. Love those animals. All right, let's move on to the next one. We do have a lot to get through today. So Esteban says, why would a subspecies not be elevated to species status? Oftentimes these species and subspecies go through review, and this happens regularly. And once they've gone through review, oftentimes there will be a publication, and that publication will then be contested, whether that is legitimate or not, as to the speciation or subspeciation of a species. So with our technology now, we're able to look at the genome of a species. We're able to look at it at some of the most finite levels, such as nuclear DNA, and be able to make subspecies analysis based on that. So once upon a time, it was mostly based on morphology and as well as geographic range, whereas now we have the tools to be able to really look into whether something is a subspecies or should it be elevated to species status. Right now in history, there is a bit of a tendency to elevate things to full species status, as we've been seeing. And in talking with Peter Paul Van Dyke, there seems to be more species that will be elevated to full species status coming down the line. We know that the Southeast Asian box turtle group, the Cuora ambonensis, is being looked at the DNA level. Most likely these will be split into several different subspecies, and so stay tuned for updates regarding that. Now, I did just notice something, and I'm going to have to run away because my plug on my computer just fell out of the wall, and, and you know, hey, the show must go on, so I need to plug that back in really quickly to make sure that I do not lose you all at any point during this broadcast. Gravity, I tell you what, it's something else. So yeah, got the plug back in. We're still live. That's good. Fantastic. Okay, so the Colonian Hut says, oh, so like Chitra javanensis and Chitra javanicus. That would be something. Again, so with the Chitra species, that is a genre of turtles that I don't have a ton of experience with. And that's where luckily other people join in. And that's what I really love about these webinars, is that if there's a question that I might not be able to answer to right away, there's others on here who may be able to. And so I really love that, just through these webinars, this has become a community. And I think that's really, really great. All right, so the next question is from Esteban again. How much time has passed between the appearance of the first reptilians in the Unitosaurus? So if you saw Turtles 101, the Unitosaurus was the first reptilian to demonstrate turtle-like morphology in its bone structure and cartilaginous plates. So reptilians first appeared on Earth about 315 million years ago. it wouldn't be until 55 million years later, thereabouts, about 260 million years ago, that Unitosaurus evolved. Now think of that time, 55 million years. I mean, this is time that's incomprehensible. You know, they're numbers that we just throw out there, but that kind of geologic time it's incredible to think about. But just to answer the question, it was about 55 million years between the appearance of reptiles on Earth and the first, the ancestor to turtles, the Unitosaurus. All right, next question from Mallory Lindsay is, what is the best way to help our local turtle species? Like I talked about, turtles live all over the world, and nowadays so do humans, and we have impacted their daily lives, their populations, and the trajectory for the populations and survivorship for species all around the world. So there is always something that can be done for turtle conservation. Not a day goes by and not a region be discarded that turtle conservation could not use a little bit of help. So what I recommend is either joining a local turtle conservation organization or initiative, or start one yourself. I know lots of people who have started their own turtle conservation organizations, and there's one thing I want to tell you about that. People love turtles. And so if you start your own turtle conservation initiative, I guarantee you, and I am saying this from experience, I guarantee you that you will get a lot of support for that initiative. These are animals that people do not want to see leave this earth, and you will therein build your own community and your own project. So all I can say is, you can do it. All right. So Tharusha has the question, in terms of evolution, did the soft-shell turtles evolve before the other types? I am referring to the flatter versus curved shaped shell. Which came first? All right, so we just talked about the arise of Unitosaurus 260 some million years ago. The next in the fossil record that really shows the prototype for our modern day turtle is Proganachelles. This is where we first saw the carapace and plastron with the bony scutes outline this nicely formed shell. So again, let's think about this really long timeline in which turtles have been alive on Earth. There have been many changes throughout that time in getting to our present day turtle. Now, about 120 million years ago is when I'll say we, as in the Earth, saw the evolution of our modern day turtles. Basically, the morphology, the design, the ancestral genre that have given rise to our modern day turtles. As far as the fossil record goes, for modern day turtles, the soft-shell turtles are the oldest turtles in the fossil record for modern day turtles. However, before that, there is other evidence, such as Proganachelles, of other more domed fossil turtles. So we've seen changes all the time. We also have to remember, over that amount of time, we may have lost some steps along the way. We may have not actually have found everything that lies within the Earth's crust in the fossil record. We have to remember, new fossils are being found all the time that gives us new links to the evolution of species. Yes, As Peter Paul just said, Odontochelys is another great one. Odontochelys has the more domed shell morphology, and this arose about 150 million years ago, I believe. I'd have to double check, but so well before our modern day turtles and that oldest fossil record of the soft-shelled turtle. All right. Ashley Whittemore asks, Jace wants to know what a turtle's favorite food is. Well, so in 201, we talked about diet and feeding. And so a turtle's diet really depends on the species and the geographic location. So even within a species, the diet can be influenced by environmental and geographic factors, such as, what berries might be more prevalent in part of that species range than another. Or, as we talked about yesterday, if there are more mollusks in a certain environment than in the other. Now, anyone who has a turtle out there knows that there's probably a food or maybe a couple foods that your turtles really love to eat. I know that my diamondback terrapins, wait, I should probably bring one out because I still do have them from yesterday's webinar. So Peter Paul, by the way, said Odontochelys was about 220 million years ago. Proganochelys about 215 million years ago. Of course, I had these in my Turtles 101. So thank you again, Peter Paul, for jogging my memory there. So 220 million years ago was Odontochelys. So I do still have my turtles from yesterday's webinar. This is a beautiful concentric phenotype of the diamondback terrapin. This is the world's only turtle that exclusively lives in brackish water environments. So there she is. I won't keep her out for long because we do have a lot of questions to get to, but just wanted you to know that, of course, I do have turtles on this webinar. Okay, so like I was saying, our diamondback terrapins, their favorite food are fiddler crabs, which are a natural food source. For my ornate box turtles, Terrapini ornata, they love night crawlers. But again, what a singular turtle's favorite food is may depend on that turtle, may depend on the species, or a lot of other factors. All right, Rachel Adams asked, what made you become so passionate about turtles? That's a really good question. So I get this question a lot, and sometimes I can't actually answer it because I've just loved turtles ever since I was about 4 years old. It's like, why does someone get attached to anything? It's something just innate within us. And I am fortunate enough that whatever it is inside me that looked at a turtle and said, this is an amazing creature. I want to learn more about them. Later on, I want to learn how to help these animals. It's something that I'm lucky to have. And turtles, they're amazing. They have an incredible history, as we just talked about. They live in all sorts of environments. I mean, when I go out into a turtle's natural environment, it's just beautiful. Okay, I know many of you own turtles at home. I own turtles as well. But let me tell you something right now. There's nothing more beautiful than seeing that species of turtle in its natural habitat. If you've ever been to a clear stream in the Northeast and seen a wood turtle lying motionless amongst rocks on its stream, it's a gorgeous sight. If you've ever seen a box turtle, sitting there amongst ferns in a moist, deciduous forest, it's a beautiful sight. I got a chance to go to Madagascar and see radiated tortoises in their native spiny forest. Again, nothing compares to seeing these animals in their native habitat. And I think that's part of my passion behind it. All right, so, and look, my mom's on. Kate Green says, he read field manuals as a 4-year-old and memorized the info. This is true. Starting at extremely young age, I used to read field guides about reptiles and amphibians and other animals. And I would actually, as my mom can attest, I would go into my parents' room as they were trying to wind down at night and have them quiz me on animals. Basically, I would tell them to just open the book to a random page, give me the description or the range of a species or its diet, anything about it, and I would have to guess what it was. So I was nerding out, like serious turtle nerding out at a very, very young age. So I think that's helped bring me to where I am today. Okay, last question here is from James Beach. How can I get my biology or environmental science students involved in captive breeding programs? I live in New York. So there are some schools in our nation, in the United States, as well as around the world, that do help with conservation programs. Most of those involve Head Start programs where turtles are hatched from eggs from wild females, incubated and hatched in captivity, reared for a period of time in a controlled environment, i.e. a classroom or a lab, and then released into the wild. So James, I will talk with you privately about how maybe your school can get involved with a conservation program in New York. And any of you out there, if you are interested in possibly getting a school program involved with a turtle conservation program, such as maybe a head starting initiative, please feel free to email me, jgray@turtlesurvival.org, and I would be glad to try to help get you involved in such an endeavor. Because I, again, have seen firsthand the impact that this makes not only on the turtle populations, but on the students themselves and their communities. All right, so next on this list, we're gonna go down to Turtles 201. From Turtles 201, we had a lot of questions, okay? Some of these webinars are a lot of me asking questions, so as I go through, I notice that a lot of them are primarily answers, whereas in Turtles 201, whoo, there was a lot of questions being asked. Okay, so first one, we're gonna have to try to fly through these because there's a lot. So from Lamster06, what kind of turtles and tortoises can I keep outdoors all year round here on Long Island? Okay, so the first thing I want to say about New York is that New York is very strict regarding the keeping of native species of turtles. All native species except for the snapping turtle are protected in New York from keeping them as pets or collecting them from the wild. If you want to do so, one must own a possession permit for those species, and that is typically given for scientific or educational reasons. I know Chris just said the eastern box turtle. However, the eastern box turtle is prohibited from being owned in the state of New York. However, there are some species that come from other areas in the world that one could own in New York or on Long Island. Ones that come to mind would be like the European pond turtle, Emys orbicularis. Another one that we know does just fine up there, as seen by Ray Farrell's collection, is the yellow margined box turtle or Chinese box turtle, Cuora flavomarginata. The Russian tortoise will do fine in those types of habitats. Peter Paul just suggested a Reeves turtle, which would also do well. That species is commonly kept in the Koreas, China, and Japan, and Russia. There are actually a number of species that are not native to New York that could be kept. So the best thing to keep in mind when wanting to keep a turtle outdoors all year long is their geographic range and their habitat requirements. So you would want to focus on turtles that come from a temperate climate in northerly latitudes, or some species that may be from temperate to subtropical climates, like I was saying, the yellow margin box turtle, who have demonstrated that they can survive well in a more northern climate. But there are many species out there. So again, look at turtles all over the world. See ones that are commonly offered from reputable breeders, and see what fits in with your climate the best. Think of it just like plant hardiness zones. Well, for keeping turtles outdoors, think of it as turtle hardiness zones. Let's see. Chris Dolanish says, even if it's bought at a reptile show CBB, correct. You cannot own the eastern box turtle in New York without a possession license. Or Peter Paul says, or give a home to unwanted red-eared sliders. Exactly. We know that red-eared sliders are living in Alaska. They're living in the fjords of Norway, in Sweden. And that turtle is also well established in the mid-Atlantic and New England. So if you live in northern climates, adopting an unwanted red-eared slider to live in your pond outside is a fantastic idea. And again, thanks, Peter Paul, for jogging my memory, because that was one that first came to mind when I was reviewing these questions. Okay, next, from the Colonian Hut. How do people come up with the names of turtles and tortoises? So we did touch on this. So oftentimes it is described by simply what it looks like the yellow margined box turtle, Cuara flavomarginata, which has a yellowish ring, we'll say, or outer margin of the marginal and bridge scutes on its carapace. Or it will be named after somebody. So let's just say there's a prominent scientist or a prominent scientist is naming a turtle for their friend or someone they admire. Those are typically ways that turtles get their names. So normally after from what they look like, from their habitat, or from naming it after someone, or maybe some type of monarchy, like we talked about, the royal turtle in Cambodia, the southern river terrapin Batagur affinis. Okay, so next, Jonathan Sturgis asked, what are some of the more interesting sounds that turtles make, and how and why do they make said noises? So turtles can make sounds. All right. The thing I have to point out is that turtles do not have vocal cords like we do. The way that they make these sounds is through expelling air from their lungs. And they can do this either through their mouth, as oftentimes seen in mating male chelonians, and maybe sometimes from females. But if you've ever seen videos of tortoises mating, you'll often hear sounds like eh, or eh, or eh. Okay. Now, a lot of those sound like whales actually underwater, and that is from expelling oxygen forcefully out of their lungs and through their mouth. Now, turtles can also make sounds through their nose, but again, that would be expelling oxygen from their lungs or carbon dioxide back through their nares or their nostrils, therefore making a sound out of their nostrils. And oftentimes this comes out as a whistling sound. It's like, because again, the oxygen is being pressed through a smaller tube in which to expel those gases. And why do they make said noises? It's part of social communication. Noises are oftentimes heard during mating activities, but they can also occur at other times, such as hatchling turtles making noises, typically very low frequency noises, to other hatchlings to communicate that it is now time to either hatch from the eggs or exit the nest, as we talked about in Turtles 301. So again, go back to that webinar. As Richard Voigt, Dick Voigt down in South America, and his research has shown, along with many other research associates, is that they have found through hydrophones that female turtles will make very low frequency noises underwater, in which to help guide the hatchling giant South American river turtles, the Podocnemis expansa, from their nesting beaches to either areas with greater vegetation for feeding on, or areas with shelter. And normally those go hand in hand. So there's a numerous reasons why turtles may make sounds. All right, Quinn says, I have eastern box turtles and was wondering if you could give me more information on brumation and how I could help them in the winter. I live in New Jersey. So if you have eastern box turtles, they will naturally brumate in New Jersey. By the way, if you missed Turtles 201, brumation is a reptile hibernation. However, it is more of a state of dormancy rather than the hibernation that you think of that mammals will go through. It is a different physiological process. I love that. So David Hedrick, my partner in Turtle Crime on the other side, just said, I'm just going to shamelessly let you all know we have a Mother's Day package available in our store. Jordan, don't forget @Kate Green. Thank you. Yes, I will remember my mother. But yes, so we do have a Mother's Day package for sale in our web store at turtlesurvival.org. There is just one of our shameless plugs. Lord have mercy. David Hedrick right there for the shameless plug. I mean, who would do shameless plugs? I love my Coke Zero. Hear that, Coke? You better give us some money. Save turtles, Coca-Cola. Save turtles. But either way, so eastern box turtles in New Jersey will naturally brumate. What I would recommend for that is giving them a lot of leaf litter, so you can rake up leaf litter in the fall. You can put in rotting logs that help provide some microclimates. You can also, before you put down the leaf litter or other debris, you can dig up the soil, kind of churn it to make it softer for them. But being that you're in New Jersey, eastern box turtles will know what to do. No kidding, I have seen turtles in the mid-Atlantic United States, eastern box turtles to be specific, hibernating, or should I say brumating, through the winter with the top of their shell exposed, even through winters with lots of snow and ice. So they have evolved to live in New Jersey and the mid-Atlantic and will do just fine through those winters. Maybe just give them a helping hand with some extra leaf litter or other debris. All right, so next one, Jonathan Sturgis asks, how do turtles breathe? Does it matter that they have no diaphragm? Really good question. Now, we humans, okay, if you put your hands there on your stomach and take a big deep breath in and then let it out, we control our breathing through this apparatus called a diaphragm. Turtles, because they have a rigid bony shell, do not have a diaphragm. So then how do they breathe? Well, turtles are able to control the oxygen in and out of their lungs through muscles in their neck, between their neck and legs, and in their legs. So if you ever look at a turtle sitting still, you will notice them moving their neck in this sort of fashion. So those turtles are they are controlling their oxygen in and out of their lungs using the muscles in their neck. Also, through moving their legs, they can control the oxygen supply. But there are some other ways that turtles can get oxygen too, quote unquote, breathing. As we talked about, there is everyone's favorite butt breathing, or shall we say cloacal respiration. And this is where the turtles will take water into their cloaca, the urogenital opening on their tail, while submerged underwater. And diffused oxygen, or excuse me, dissolved oxygen will diffuse across the cloacal bursa, which is a membrane that is highly vascularized, meaning it has extensive matrices of blood vessels, and that oxygen permeates the membrane itself, going into the bloodstream, and helps the turtle breathe underwater. And then another way is that some turtles are able to have that oxygen, that dissolved oxygen, diffuse across their skin and into the capillaries that reach the outer layer of the skin. So those are all ways that turtles are able to breathe. All right, next one from Batagira finis. What do Menorrhea emys eat in the wild? So Menorrhea emys is the Asian giant tortoise. They have two subspecies, the Asian giant brown tortoise, Menorrhea emys, and the Asian black giant tortoise, also known as the Burmese black giant tortoise, Menorrhea emys fabrii. Both of these species are omnivorous. They're highly herbivorous, but they are classified as omnivores, and this is why. So their main diet is comprised of leafy vegetable matter, fruits, bamboo shoots, and fungi. They also eat animal matter, and there's a simple reason for this. If an animal that lives in the forest, such as these tortoises, is foraging and they come across animal matter that, one, maybe they could easily pick up themselves, such as a beetle crawling across the forest floor, or maybe they come across the carcass of a dead animal. This is not an opportunity that they want to pass up to get different vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients, and a different source of protein. So animal protein versus proteins found in plants. So those are all foods that species of tortoise eats. Okay, Seamus asks, why do turtles and tortoises have a crest at the top ends of their skulls? Okay, so I'm going to turn sideways here. So if you go back to Turtles 101, and I hope you all go back and watch these webinars. They're great for binge watching, almost as good as Tiger King, right? You have the predominant skull bones right here, and then you have this skull bone that extends far back here. Okay, I don't know if you all can see that. The reason that is because if you remember from us talking about the anatomy of these animals, they do not have teeth. They are not able to use utensils like forks, knives, or chopsticks. They must be able to catch or crunch or tear or whatever it may be for their food source. And this requires them to have strong musculature around their beak. So the maxilla right here and the mandible, the bottom beak. So located right here behind the temples, so we'll call it a supratemporal region, so above the temples here, you have several different types of adductor muscles that turtles possess for being able to have crushing or tearing power with their beaks. And that is the simple reason why the skull is shaped like that, to give room for such types of muscles. All right, moving on. Ooh, look at all these. I've got to fly through these, right? I don't want y'all leaving me. Or you can always come back and watch, of course. But Pelf in Malaysia asked, what about turtles that are omnivorous when they're juveniles but become herbivorous when they're mature? So there are numerous species of turtles, especially freshwater turtles, who are omnivorous when they're young, feeding heavily on aquatic invertebrates and vertebrates. So things like amphibians, aquatic insects, mollusks, and crustaceans, or other types of maybe aquatic or terrestrial worms. But then as they mature, they move to an omnivorous but highly herbivorous diet. Some turtles that I can think of off the top of my head would be like your red-eared slider. Most people around the world know this one. That would be a species who is highly omnivorous, if not carnivorous, when they're young, but become primarily herbivorous as adults. The painted turtle is another good one. I mean, there are lots of examples, and I won't be able to get to them all today in the interest of time. Next, Amanda K asks, can their characteristics change as they get older or larger? For instance, can the location of their cloaca change? This was in reference to the expression of sexual characteristics relating to dimorphism. So again, the difference between males and females. Oh, Kate Green gotta go. So there we go. My mom has already gotten bored of me. Oh, goodbye, mother. I'm sure I'll make you watch the rest. But either way, so yes, there are some characteristics can change. The most notable one that is observed in some genre of turtles is an ontogenic shift in their phenotype or their expressed characteristics. Okay, one I'm going to use a really good example of is the red-eared slider again. This turtle is one that we can easily use because it is known throughout the world. So the red-eared slider is typically a base color of, some sort of green with yellow and black stripes and a red blotch on the face. Okay, that's just the simple characteristics of this turtle. However, for most male red-eared sliders, once they hit maturity and as they continue to age, they will express what's called ontogenic melanism. And so this is a change in the expression of the pigment melanin, so black, pigment-producing cells in their skin. We so many times in our Facebook groups of people asking what kind of turtle is this, such as the Wild Turtles ID or Wild Turtles discussion Facebook groups, people will show a turtle asking what it is. And so often, I mean, almost like 90%, it is either a male or maybe even a really old female yellow or yellow belly or red-eared slider, or maybe a Cumberland slider, or one of your other species or subspecies of sliders. Either way, we'll just say slider. And that is because they will go through an expression, an increased expression of melanin in their pigmentation. So going on from Noah, Noah asks, is the use of sexual weaponry in males common amongst most turtles and tortoises, as in the recent paper published on Chrysemys picta in Algonquin Park, and that's in Canada? It depends on the species. Some males are very aggressive, and they will bite at the females to subdue them into mating. Other males are rather passive. Some males are so small, such as in the Graptemys complex. So one I can think off the top of my head is like the Texas map turtle, Graptemys versa, where the adult male is just about 3 inches long at best. And so those are, they're more parasitic, we'll call it, than a formidable adversary. So they don't use any sort of sexual weaponry. They're mostly just a swimming phallus that is ready to breed with a female should she accept them. So it really depends on the species, how much aggression, sorry, I couldn't think for a minute, aggression is shown towards from the male, or even from the female towards the male. All right, next, Vova in Russia asked, how long can turtles hibernate? So that really depends where you're coming from, what the geographic region is, and of course, the climate on an annual basis. So some autumns come earlier than others, some winters are warmer or colder than others, and some springs last longer into the season. But for some of the species in northern or extremely southern climates, some species can hibernate, or like we just talked about, Brew Mate, up to about 8 months. Sometimes even then going into an estivation, like we talked about in 401, which is dormancy during a warm period during an abrupt summer, therefore extending their dormancy period for almost 9 months out of the year. That would be an active season of only 3 to 4 months. Absolutely incredible when you think about it. All right, next, again from Pelf. Does the hardness of the eggshell depend on the food they consume? The eggshell is primarily made of aragonite, which is a crystalline structure of calcium carbonate. And that the hardness of it really depends on the species. So there are some species that have rather brittle shells. Your tortoises, for example, primarily have these brittle shelled eggs, to somewhat soft in some species. Then you have your quote unquote soft shelled or more pliable turtle eggs. Hey, you know what turtle would be a good example there? The red-eared slider. But either way, so the hardness of the shell really depends on the species, but there are also environmental factors at play, such as was the female able to have enough calcium storage and synthesis for the eggshells of her eggs. Okay, next question. Diamondback terrapins, which is Travis Whitaker in Pennsylvania, asks, what causes the embryo to know it's time to affix to the side of the egg, that it is no longer in the turtle? Is it because of oxygen permeating through the shell of the egg? So Diamondback terrapin, Travis, your answer there is actually pretty good. So turtle eggs go through what we call ovipositional arrest, okay? And so they arrest at least the blastulus stage of development. And they do this so that they don't continue development within the egg, within the female, but also mostly so that when they're laid, development begins at the same time, and then hatching will commence at about the same time. And if you've watched our previous webinars, we've talked about synchronistic hatching of these eggs. Within the oviduct, these eggs are covered in oviductal fluid, which does cover the pores of their egg. You have to remember that these eggs are not a completely impermeable membrane. They are a semi-permeable membrane. And so the pores of the eggs are somewhat clogged, we'll say. They're covered in these fluids within the oviduct. When they are laid, the eggs are now in a new environment. They have now been exposed to oxygen, coming out of an environment in which there is a degree of oxygen tension, a somewhat hypoxic environment, into an environment where there are other environmental factors, different levels of moisture, different pressure, different temperatures, and as we said, oxygen. So those are all environmental factors that will trigger the embryo to then resume development from that arrested stage. That's a really good question. All right, next, Lucas Aziz asks, how does a female know exactly the size of the nest she has to dig? Well, a lot of that depends on the species and also the size of the female. So a smaller female of a species will, just because of the size of her shell, the size of her extended legs, dig a shallower nest than, say, a larger female would. Just think about it. Go out into your backyard, okay? Take whatever height you are and a 4-foot shovel, and then get somebody who's a lot taller than you with a 4-foot shovel, and see whose arms extend the longest to dig the deepest. Now, also there are triggers or cues that the female has going on within her body that gives her the idea of how many eggs she is going to deposit. Also, as she's depositing the eggs, she both can feel the eggs coming out of her cloaca, as well as then positions them with her legs. So let's just say they have kind of a turtle count. So kind of making little adjustments to the eggs within the chamber to be able to accommodate more eggs. So that's kind of the simple answer that I will give there. I know I said simple, but you all are like, Jordan, nothing's simple about you. All right, let's go on to our Earth Day webinar. This was mostly people commenting, so we only have 2 questions. I know, big sigh of relief there from all of you. But from Ryan Rimple, he asked a simple question with a very complex answer that kind of opens up Pandora's box. All right, is stopping at wild-caught turtles enough? This is where I talked about not purchasing wild-caught turtles. Are you concerned that keeping any turtles as pets increases the demand for wild-caught individuals? All right, I'm going to say something very, very simple. I am the communication and outreach coordinator for a nonprofit organization that deals with turtle conservation all around the world. And we have a very large network that I've talked about that consists of private breeders. It consists of zoological institutions and other nonprofits. So taking stances on questions like this is difficult because it really depends on the scenario. There's a lot of gray areas. It's also my last name, so everywhere I go, there's a gray area. What a joke. But the thing is number one, we do not want any turtles taken out of the wild to be pets. I'm going to say this right now. I am not against people owning turtles as pets. I own turtles as pets. I also use them for educational outreach. I would let's say, want to inspire you to, if you have pet turtles, use them to educate others, whether that be on social media or having a neighbor come over to your house, or maybe even setting up your own little booth in your neighborhood talking about turtles, giving back to these animals. But this is a very complex area because the thing about people is when we see something, we want something. And when we don't see something, it becomes out of sight, out of mind. I mean, think about our society, capitalism. Think about merchandising. Okay, when a car company wants to sell trucks, they're going to put the trucks out on the front line for you to view and want to buy. It will put that idea in your head that you want to get that item. Okay, when they want you to get a sedan, they will move the trucks to the back. Well, the same kind of simple analogy can be used for turtles and tortoises. When we share pictures of turtles, we have to remember that that can inspire others to then want to own that turtle as a pet. And it's one of those things where it's difficult because you need to share what you love for other people to love it too, and to become passionate, to want to conserve them. At the other end of the spectrum, we also have to be very cognizant of the fact that let's say somebody shares a photo of a spotted turtle, that beautiful turtle from the eastern United States and Canada. Well, that might inspire somebody to want to get one of those animals. So all I can say is for everyone to use their best judgment, to act morally and responsibly. And if somebody does get a pet turtle, to do all the research you can to give that turtle the proper life that it deserves. As for increasing or decreasing the demand on wild-caught turtles, there are scenarios where demand for a certain wild species has decreased due to their market price dropping because of more individuals being bred and entering the pet trade. Okay, we've seen this. We've also seen the other side. We've seen where turtles are heavily bred and enter the marketplace, and yet wild animals are still caught to become new founder members for new breeding lines or genetic lines of that species. Okay, think about the sulcata tortoise, the African spur-thighed tortoise. Okay, this is one of the most commonly kept tortoises on Earth. Okay, you can get them relatively inexpensive depending where you are for a hatchling. Okay, this turtle is now a critically endangered species in Africa. Okay, before their proliferation in the pet trade, they were not a critically endangered species. Yes, are there other factors, socioeconomic, and then development of their habitat for agriculture, reduction of water for irrigation, combined with that? Absolutely. But it's just one of these things that we think of the sulcata tortoise as an extremely common tortoise because they are proliferated in captivity. However, that takes us away from remembering that this species is now critically endangered in the wild. And so again, it's just doing all the research you can to and making your own decision on whether what you're doing helps. And if it doesn't, maybe how can you help turn that into something in which it does help? And that's where I talk about maybe trying to engage more in conservation and outreach. Okay, moving on. The Colonian Hut, are there any programs in Thailand? Okay, so Thailand is one of these countries that has a lot of different turtle species, 30 of them to be exact. However, when it comes to tortoise and freshwater turtle conservation, there is a lack in formal programs to help the turtles there. However, being that it is in Southeast Asia, we know that this country has been hit very hard by collection for food, pet, and traditional medicine markets. So I asked my friend Peter Paul Van Dyke with Global Wildlife Conservation and the IUCN Tortoise and Freshwater Turtle Specialist Group, hey, can you help give me some guidance for the Kelownian hut there for getting involved in Thailand. And so this is what Peter Paul got back to me with. And Peter Paul, I abbreviated your response to make it most applicable. I hope you're okay with me using this response. If not, next time you see me, just bonk me over the head, or I'll get you some Turtle Survival Alliance merchandise to make it all better. But Peter Paul says, yes, a challenging question. Most turtle conservation in Thailand happens inside protected areas, so it's completely managed by the government's department responsible for protected areas. So the field is wide open for the Kelownian hut to develop a citizen science monitoring program of turtles in the wild, or monitoring trade in markets, or develop awareness campaigns among pet buyers, religious release buyers, temples and monks with turtle-inhabited temple ponds, or take a focused interest in a particular place and improve habitat for turtles at a local park or temple grounds. And I think that is a really fantastic answer. The reason is inspiring. It shows that there is a country that has, like he said, it's wide open for people and communities to start turtle conservation programs. And like I said earlier in this broadcast, your passion will resonate with others. If you start a conservation project, I guarantee you others will get on board and get behind you, and you will see it grow and hopefully prosper. So let's keep in touch, the Kelownian hut. And if you need more information from great resources like Peter Paul, I would be glad to help you out there. All right, moving on to 301. Again, not very many questions here. Actually, one question, because from that one I went through and it was all comments or answers to questions I asked. So here we go. One question. Lucas Aziz asked, how about hatchlings? How important is vitamin A for tortoise hatchlings in captivity? So vitamin A is an important vitamin. And this vitamin can be found in various different sources. For those of you with turtles and tortoises at home, it can most readily be found in dark leafy greens, as well as fruits in the orange and red category. So think of, like you see there, your pumpkin, your carrot, your yellow squash. These different fruits that have beta carotene and express these pigmentations are typically sources where you can find vitamin A. You can also find it in certain fish oils, and being able to give turtles different types of fish that may have different oils that they will be able to ingest would be ways of getting vitamin A. But why is vitamin A important? Well, for one, it's important for eye health. Okay, our eyes are very, very important, and as they are for a turtle or tortoise. I see Peter Paul added something else. I'm gonna add something else in here before I get to what Peter Paul said. But vitamin A is also important for our bodily functions. Once it is processed through the liver, it is important for basically combating free radicals within your body, which can lead to cancers and cancerous cells. So vitamin A has a lot of different important uses, and yes, it is something that you can be able to give to your turtles or tortoises. So Peter Paul then said, in fairness, the government of Thailand has done more earlier for turtle conservation than most other Southeast Asian countries, and things never got as bad for turtles in nature as in nearby countries. So thank you, Peter Paul, for adding that in. And what's great about these webinars is not only are they archived on YouTube, we also archive them on our Turtle Survival Alliance Facebook page, website, and all these comments are archived as well. So you all can always go back into these comments to look at the information given by others, such as for Peter Paul. Okay. Lastly, we will go to Turtles 401. We're well over an hour now. So from Turtles 401 also, I believe there was only, that's right, there was 2 questions from Turtles 401 that remain to be answered. And also in some of these webinars, I was able to get to most of the questions. So these are ones that were kind of left unanswered. Okay, so from Ambuj in India, he asked, can you give an update about the progress on black softshell turtle reintroduction in India? All right, so last year, field technicians for the Turtle Survival Alliance did find wild juvenile black softshell turtle, Nilsonia nigricans, in the wild in the Brahmaputra River in the state of Assam. Also, the Turtle Survival Alliance has been working for many years with the Nagsankar Temple in Assam. This is one of the temples that is one of the most widely known for its populations of black softshell turtles inhabiting the temple pond. They have dozens and dozens of these individuals, and so we have worked with them for numerous years on collecting eggs from nests laid by females, from moving those eggs to hatcheries and hatching the eggs. Let's also move over to Bangladesh. Something I want to mention is that what's really great about all this is that the black softshell turtle, okay, it's an enormous turtle, looks very much like the Swinhose or Yangtze giant softshell turtle, one that many people know of, Raphida swinhoei. They look very similar. But either way, this huge softshell turtle was presumed extinct in the wild by the IUCN and until its quote-unquote rediscovery. So now it is considered critically endangered in the wild as well as captivity. The largest populations of these animals do exist in temple ponds, and so the next temple pond I'll move over to is the shrine of Bayazid Bastami in Bangladesh. So at the shrine of Bayazid Bastami, our partner, the Creative Conservation Alliance, has a program to work with the temple in collecting eggs, translocating them to hatcheries and hatching them. And if you see that, I mean, that super, super, super cute hatchling turtle right there, that is a hatchling black softshell turtle from Bangladesh, from the shrine of Bayazid Bostami. That was taken by my friend Scott Tragesser of Nature Stills Photography, who takes just absolutely amazing photographs, such as that hatchling turtle there. All right, next I'll go to Boris, who asked, I've seen macro shedding with red-eared sliders. Do tortoises macro shed as well? So if you didn't catch yesterday's webinar, we talked about the shedding or sloughing of the outer layer of keratin, whether that's the skin or the outer layer of the shell of the turtle. And there's two general categories, and that is micro shedding or macro shedding. So micro shedding is observed in what I would say is the predominant amount of turtles and tortoises around the world. And this is where just very, very small fragments of keratin and cells are sloughed off of the animal's skin and shell. However, macro shedding does occur in several genera of turtles, such as, like Boris said, with the red-eared sliders, the group Trachemes. And this is where they shed the whole entire outer lamina of the plate or scute off their shell. And they may do this once, if not twice, annually, depending on where the species is found, whether that be a colder or warmer climate or the amount of food resources available that year. So the answer, do tortoises macro shed? No, they do not. All right, Sumi Akui asks, if it is not too late to ask a question, I would like to know what is TSA's stance regarding invasive turtle species. Okay, simply put, invasive turtle species should belong, or should I say, belong where they're from. These turtles can have an impact on their environments, not just the turtles that live in them, but other vertebrates and invertebrates within those environments. And so it is important that for those of us who are turtle owners, that we responsibly keep these animals, and if one is no longer able to keep this animal, responsibly finds a new home for it. A lot of people, unfortunately, dump these animals into various terrestrial or aquatic habitats. This is, overall, this is not good for the environment, and in many cases, not good for that specific animal. It may be put into a habitat where it is not able to survive, and very well may endure a very long, gruesome, and excruciating death at the hands of dehydration, starvation, or through the inability to metabolize correctly. All right, so yeah, she was saying, so Sumi Akui was saying, of course, that is not the only reason of declining populations of Moramis japonica. So yes, the Japanese pond turtle, Moramis japonica, red-eared sliders, they can be found all over the world, as I talked about in Turtles 101. I would consider them, quote-unquote, the most common turtle, or maybe the most commonly known turtle. I can't exactly quantify their global population, but it is very large. But they do compete with turtles for resources, such as food, such as basking sites, or possibly nest site competition. And those other turtles may be scared out of optimal nesting areas. So again, be responsible, and we'll have less issues with invasive species. She says that, or Sumi Akui says, I'm sorry, I said she, but I don't know if you are male or female. Some local governments are trying to get rid of red-eared sliders. So yes, some governments, whether it be state, provincial, regional, and national, have instituted regulations regarding red-eared sliders specifically. And in some states, they have begun, or states, regions, provinces, wherever, have begun invasive removal of this species for euthanasia or adopting them if homes can be found. And that is, I personally am not going to comment on that right now. All I can say is, as I've said before, it comes down to the responsibility of the pet owner. If governments are having to euthanize red-eared sliders or other invasive species due to their being invasive in their non-native habitats, that all comes back down to the irresponsibility of the original owner. So everybody, we can do our part, and turtles will be better for it. All right, now, does anybody else have a final turtle question you want to ask? This is basically the end of our 101 to 401 Turtles series. Yep, there it is. No, that was just a little Gradue in my eye from sleeping. No, that wasn't a tear. But I will miss you all very, very much. I've enjoyed talking to you. Don't worry. Next week, we'll be right back here because I'm going to start a whole new series. But before I do that, does anybody else have any final turtle questions that you would like to ask? I would love to answer them. And join me for our next series where you can, again, ask as many questions as you want. Sumi Akui says, I am actually male even though I keep my nails short. Well, thank you for your answer. All right. All right, Emily, I like your enthusiasm. Woo! New series on more turts. Yes, this series is going to be awesome. This series is going to be called TSA Around the World. I'm going to take you to all of our range country programs and projects where we work with and positively impact 117 species and subspecies of turtles and tortoise around the world. We will start in Belize, move down to Colombia, and then just fly all across the world until eventually we will end in Charleston, South Carolina at our Turtle Survival Center. Between then, I hope you have some comfy shoes, wear multiple layers of clothing, get a nice headrest and something to drink, because we're going to be on an airplane for many, many hours together. All right, so real quick, Chris asks, how do I get involved in your tortoise adoption program? Really want to help adopt Burmese star tortoises. So Chris, we don't actually have an adoption program right now for our Burmese star tortoises. If you're actually talking about adopting to have one in your possession. However, we do loan turtles out, we adopt them, quote unquote, to responsible owners every year from select hatching events at our Turtle Survival Center. To be qualified for that, however, you need to be a TSA member in good standing of at least 2 consecutive years. So if you just got your TSA membership, you are going to have to wait another 2 years until you are qualified to receive those hatchlings. Some of the hatchlings that we do find more homes for managed breeding programs would be like the yellow margined box turtle, Cuora flavomarginata, both from our Turtle Survival Center, as well as from Ray Farrell in Staten Island, New York. All right, so I think those are most of the questions coming in. As always, if you want to learn more about turtles, read a book, download scientific journal articles. Look, for any question you have, I'll bet there's a good scientific journal article about it, okay? So whatever topic it is, type it into your search engine. And look at scholarly articles. I love reading these papers because there is always something to learn, okay? A lot of people call, the group of people who work in turtle conservation or breeders or whatever that might be, hobbyist turtle experts. I would like to say that many of us are advanced in turtle knowledge, or we are turtle enthusiasts who are dedicated to knowledge acquisition, because there is always more to learn about turtles. And I hope that one day one of you watching becomes one of those people who advances our knowledge about a turtle species, or maybe turtles in general. Again, follow us on our TSA social media. That is at Turtle Survival on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please, once we're able to socially interact with each other within close proximity, volunteer with a turtle research project or conservation group. But until then, I'll bet you could start emailing. I'll bet you could start texting or whatever method of communication to start working on the plans for a turtle conservation project, because there is a lot of paperwork that goes into it, and permits and strategy before actually getting a conservation project running and on the ground. As always, please, if you have further questions, send them to me at jgray@turtlesurvival.org. I would love to chat and talk with you more. How to get involved? TSA's 10 ways you can help turtles on our website. Volunteer with the TSA program. Again, you can find all this on the website. Become a TSA member. Become a TSA donor. Remember, all of us, we're all in this together. And our turtle programs are suffering as well due to the pandemic. So please, becoming a TSA member or a donor continues to help the turtles through this difficult time period. And I know coming up May 5th is Giving Tuesday. Normally it's only once per year in December, but this year, because of the toll that the economic fallout has caused for nonprofits all around the world, especially conservation nonprofits, there will be another Giving Tuesday on May 5th. There you go. You know all that. So, as always, thank you so much. Here's your dog riding on the back of a turtle. And this has been great. I hope you all have a wonderful day, a wonderful end of your week. And we will see you right back here next week as we begin TSA around the world. So I hope you have your plane tickets. Until then, turtle knowledge is turtle power. Turtle onward, folks. See you later, and thanks.